Hi everyone, welcome back to another how to draw lesson. This week we're going to look at 2-point perspective sketching, and we'll use the app that's available on self-service. It's called Sketchbook. If you haven't installed that already, you can go into self-service, and if you press on home at the bottom, it gives you the Autodesk Sketchbook. This is it here, and just press to install that. Now this works with Apple Pencil if you're lucky enough to have one. It works with your finger as well. So let's launch the Sketchbook app just now and see what we have to work with. So when you open up your Sketchbook app, you should have a blank white screen, and you can use 2 fingers to pinch, and that zooms out, or you can move your fingers further apart to zoom in, and you can also rotate your fingers to rotate the page. Now I'm going to keep this at angle 0, and I'm going to make this page fill up about that much space there. There's a tool in here that helps you with perspective sketching, and it's found just here in the menu at the top. If you press on this, it gives you different options. The one that is blue just now is active, and that is 1-point perspective. We could also press the next one and go into 2-point perspective, or the next one still that's 3-point perspective. We're not going to focus on 1 or 3-point today, we're going to look at 2-point perspective. So I'll grab a rubber and rub out this arrow, and then put my guides back on. 2-point perspective. Now, these blue circles here, you can move them around. Do try and make sure that they form a horizontal line between each other, just like that one. If you're sketching on a diagonal line, it's going to make everything look a bit wonky. So we have our guides set up, and to avoid these moving in future, let's just press on the padlock to lock that in place. It's up to you whether or not you keep the guides visible. I like to do it with mine off, but for the purposes of this exercise, we will keep them on. Now when you're drawing a 2-point perspective drawing, the first thing to do is to sketch in your leading edge, it's called. So we're going to draw a series of cubes, and these will look like there is one edge closest to us. So if I draw this in here, quite a thick pencil, that is the front edge. If I turn my perspective guides off, I'm going to pop in a bottom edge and a top edge, put my guides back on, and if I just press on there and take the line right back to the vanishing point, there I have the illusion of the object getting smaller as it gets further away. So the next thing to do after we've taken these height points back to each vanishing point is to set a width and a depth, and you can do that simply just by drawing a line vertically that crosses over both the top line and the bottom line. Now Sketchbook helps to keep your lines straight automatically. You can see here I'm just drawing a line in, and I'm actually moving my pen about. You can see it getting darker, and it keeps exactly on the line that was drawn. So I don't want that line in, so I'll undo. Next thing we need to do is take each of these points here back to the opposite vanishing point. So that means this one will come back to this vanishing point, and this one here on the right hand side comes back to the other vanishing point. Now you can see that's me trying to draw freehand without the guides on. If I can contrast that with drawing with the guides on, and you can see how the line is perfectly straight. Now I don't like that thick line. Maybe turn the thickness of my pencil down, make it 0 point, and make it 1. Let's see how that works. Yeah, that's tidy. There you go. Nice and neat. So there we have what looks like a cuboid. Right now, it looks a bit untidy because there are a lot of construction lines. So on the pen menu at the side here, you can press on the technical pen, set a thickness. I usually like to do it in a big thick 4mm line. And now just beyond the double puck, this is the double puck here. If I look beyond the double puck to the big plus up in the layers panel, I can press on that and it'll add a new layer underneath. So let me come in with a rubber just now, rub out this arrow, but it's not doing anything when I'm rubbing my pencil on it, so instead I'll need to make sure I'm on the active layer, and then I can rub that out. Come back into the new layer, move my double puck up, perspective guides back on, and let's go ahead and outline Something that's important to do when it comes to colouring this in later on is to make sure the lines overlap. So if I turn off the construction lines, you see it looks a wee bit untidy, so I'm probably going to come in with my rubber and rub out this line at the back here. If you have a problem rubbing out, it might be that your perspective guides are still on. It's not quite good enough, so come in like that. There we go, and I'll turn my guides back on, pen tool again, and then from this corner I'll take it back there. And I'll probably need to go over this line too. Now, because we've filled in these lines and they're overlapping slightly, that means that we can use the selection tool, which is just here. Now the selection tool has a feature inside it called the magic wand, which is not this one. That's a lasso select. You could also do a rectangle select. And the next option across here in blue is the magic wand. And what happens is, if you press on an area, you get a dotted line, or what happens is, if you press on an area, you get a dashed line all around the border of that area. And if I make a new layer, I can add some colour in here. So I'm going to make this colour red. And see, I'm getting quite messy here, not really taking my time. I'm filling this in a nice red colour. Now I've gone over this 3 times. If you press on the airbrush or any of the pen or brush tools on the left hand panel, you can change something called the opacity. So right now it's set to 100%. And if I spray my line across, I'll need to clear my selection first. If I spray a line across here, I can go over that line and over it and it doesn't get any darker. But if I drop my opacity down to say 50%, if I go over it once, I can go over it again and again and again, and I can make it even darker the more times I go over it. I had this opacity set away down to 11% there, and that's really handy for doing rendering because we want different values on each face. So let's come into selection tool again, magic wand, and I'll select this face here. Now because I'm on the wrong layer, I'm on the layer that has my colour in it, I'm going to have to come into the layer with all my ink on it. That just makes sure that I can colour in the right place. So there's my magic wand on that panel, airbrushing here. This is going to be a darker face because it's facing away from the light source. So there's 3 to make it about even. There's 4 makes it look even better. 5, and let's go for 6 this time. Now you'll notice something in the panel on the right hand side here. I've actually added that colour on the wrong layer. That was a mistake. So it's just something to keep track of when we're doing this. Make a new layer above that one. Airbrush tool again. Let's go once, twice, thrice, 4 times, 5 times, and 6 times. Now we can clear that selection, use the magic wand, and come into the ink layer, press on the top face, make a new layer above that one. With the airbrush, we can go over this once, twice. Now that all looks pretty neat. If I clear the selection and then turn off the selection tool, I can come in with the rubber and just tidy up the corners a bit. I'm probably going to make this rubber a bit smaller, and I do that just by grabbing on the grey handle and dragging it down and then sneaking right up on the line like that, just to make sure I'm in the right layer first of all. Let's have that in there. That edge is looking slightly off, that'll annoy me, but I'm not looking for neatness just now because drawing with your fingers is difficult. And there we have a cuboid. Now a handy hint here, if you drag this layer, your ink layer, above all the different colours, you can press on it and merge down. Press, just press merge, press and merge again, and that puts all of that into the one layer, so you don't need to move layers or manipulate layers individually anymore. Let me just undo that. Now I'm going to create a new layer above this one and use the perspective tool once again, and this time we're going to draw another cuboid. So let me make this a black pencil again. Perspective guide's on. This time I'm going to put my front edge somewhere down at the front here. I'm going to take heights back across to the other vanishing point, put on a depth on both sides, and then take those back. And there we have another cuboid. And there we have another cuboid. Now something interesting happens if we start to draw above the vanishing point. If I pop my line there and I just set 2 heights and take them back to each vanishing point, and I put on the depth again, instead of seeing the top face of this cuboid, we can see the bottom face. So it looks like the cuboid's just floating in. So it looks like the cuboid's just floating in midair. Come back into my pen tool, a new ink layer above, and let's outline this. I'm going to zoom in a bit because I find it's easier to get accurate lines. No, that's wrong. Now, you can see with my ink in here, I have stretched out this face slightly because some of my lines weren't accurate enough, and that's okay at this stage. If I turn that line off, there we have a floating cube. Now I'll show you another method for rendering these cubes, and that is just to use the airbrush again. I'm going to maybe make this one a blue colour instead, and apply a nice blue colour all over the object. Now I haven't done any selection here, but I'm keeping my finger on because as soon as I lift my finger off to start rendering again, it's going to start adding another layer of the colour in. And you can see that I've made it slightly darker. Now I lifted my pen off. So I'll have to try and correct that on all these so I can start again. So there's a nice even layer of colour. That gives us a nice light tone. But in fact we don't actually have any light tones here because the light's coming from the top. So let me just go over this again and again, building up more and more colour each time. And something we need to think about now is adding in a darker colour. So I've made a layer above this one, and this face here is going to be facing away from the light. So that one will be the darkest colour. It all looks a bit messy at the moment. A new layer above that one. Let's add in some colour on the bottom face. Now, it does look a bit messy. We need to come back in with the rubber. And if we zoom in, we can start to tidy it up. So I'll start off by doing the outside. That's this bottom layer here. I'll start off tidying that up. And because we've got quite a thick outline, we can actually get away with rendering in inside. And what's happened? My outline's disappeared because I'd done all that inking and I'd done all that colouring on a layer that had my ink on it. So make a new layer above, start that process all over again. I'm actually going to increase this to 25% or 24 and make the brush size larger. That way I can go over the whole shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that'll do for a light tone. Mid-tone, let's do on this right hand face here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and a new layer for the bottom face. We'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it is looking quite blurry. I need to do 4 more on the bottom layer. 1, 2, 3, 4. before, just to make that darker than the right hand face. Now what's happened is, we've built all that layer up in quite a messy way, so we need to come back in with the rubber. And if I start off on the layer that I've coloured the whole object in, because I've done the colouring on a different layer this time, I can come in with the rubber, maybe increase the size, and I can rub out all these lines. And something that will make this look even neater is if you drag this layer just on the right hand side, drag your ink layer up to the top, pops everything else behind it, and it lets you get a nice clean take on these things. Now I'm actually rubbing that layer out again, so there is the importance of paying attention to what you're doing. Now it looks like I've not rubbed much out there, and that's because I've gone over that layer so many times. I like to rotate my page round all the time, because I find drawing at the right angle really helpful. So we've tidied up this layer, let's tidy up the layer above now, and we'll need to zoom in some more. Go in and erase all this stuff. This is a very therapeutic way of rendering. If you're looking for fast results, I would possibly do the selection tool method, because personally I find that a lot easier. Now I've gone around the whole outside of the shape there. I need to do the inside shape now. I can't really see that too well down at the bottom here, but I'll just have a guess and I'll come back in and tidy it up later. Next is the bottom, so just rub these out again. Looks like I've missed that bit of blue on the other layer, so while I'm here I'll just get rid of that just now, come back into this layer, and I've missed this blue too, but not to worry, I'll just go through my layers and I'll try and tidy that up some. It's actually on this layer. There we have another cube that's floating in the air and has been rendered slightly differently. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these in time-lapse to fill up the page and show you what it could look like. So there we go folks, there's the finished drawing. We've got different cubes in different locations. Something that you might want to do to add another wee bit of depth in here is to bring your opacity all the way down to maybe 10 with a solid black, and on a layer above the ground layer, above the background layer, you can start to draw in some wee shapes of shadows. If you reduce the brush size, you can get in a wee tight corner and you can fill in some shadow shapes like across and layer above the green one. We could pop a shadow in there for where the blue cube's hovering over, and then just come in and delete all around that with a larger eraser. Delete all around that. Looks like a wee dirty mark, but it is in fact just the shadow for where the cube's hovering over it. Lots to think about in that lesson folks. I look forward to seeing what you do. Make sure you hand it in as an assignment, and happy sketching.